Welcome to the Peak Podcast. My name is Kyle Nelson. I've got my good co-host and buddy here, Mr. Eli Libby.
Hey,
We've got a good show coming at you today.
Heck yeah, we do. Let's rock and roll, man. I'm excited to be here, and it's another great day in the studio.
Yeah,
Cannot complain.
Beautiful day.
Beautiful studio setup. We've got a great team back there, and we're excited.
You know, I was thinking about, as we sat down today, I was looking at the screen, because we have to teleprompter view, right, so we can see our guests. And I always think about how crazy it is, the point of view of who's being filmed and how different it looks. The lights and everything.
That's a good point. Yeah,
it's so
really
different.
wild. Yeah.
One day we should do
jump on
a different angle to show everybody.
For sure.
How we do our
Or
podcast.
in StreamYard, you can also jump on your phone and you can show
That's
them
true.
that way.
Which is kind of fun. We should do that one day.
Show them Scooter in the back.
Well, before we get started, I want to share a little bit about the Peak Podcast for those of you that have never visited before. Peak Podcast, what we do is we interview entrepreneurs, business owners, coaches, and so many other people to really ask them what that peak moment was in life when they started what they're working on today, because usually it's a pretty cool story to learn about.
Absolutely.
Besides that, we are the co-founders of Peak Fulfillment, where we help people go on self-guided solo retreats, where they remove those limited beliefs, they do some good self-reflection and self-discovery, and really craft a vision for the future when they have a little brain fog and searching for the clarity in life. So head to peakfulfillment.co if you want to go on your own solo retreat. But before that, we want to have a good combo with a new guest.
Man.
So let's bring on Dane Wagner, the CPO and co-founder of Symeta Behavior Science. What's going on?
Hey, it's going well, man. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, excited to have you.
Stoked to have you.
You rebranded, right?
Yeah. We're launching the rebrand officially this February.
How did that go?
It's been a
Wild.
experience, to say the least. You know, there's a lot that goes into a rebrand, and you don't really think about it. You have to manage all the people that already know who you are and the people that are about to know who you are, all at the same time. So there's a lot that goes into it.
Tell us about the logo, about the logo.
Yeah,
right?
Sure. So our logo is actually a 4-dimensional hypercube. That sounds crazy, right? For us that are into physics and all that stuff, it's really an idea that it's multi-level, right? It's all about having these different levels all combined at once, because we're talking about an ecosystem.
Sure.
We're talking about looking at not just the ground level where people typically behave, where people typically act, but we're looking at the entire system as a whole. So we decided to do something a little special with that and create our logo that way.
Right.
That's awesome.
Man, that is very
Now
cool.
that you explain it, I can see it.
Yeah, right. You can see all the levels.
You see us working that way.
I always love understanding the kind of ethos.
Yeah, I
behind,
do too.
The icon logo of it.
Yeah, I think icons are so cool.
They are.
I think they're very cool, and I think they're the ones that mean a lot. Remember the one in Salt Lake? We went to the tribe, or the X Factor, the tribe. Remember how crazy that detailed was? It was like the crossroads.
Yeah,
it was so cool.
It's good.
Yeah.
Well, Dane, before we kind of dive into the meat and potatoes of the convo, just in a couple minutes, what do you do at Symeta Behavior Science, and what is the company's main services?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Chief Product Officer and co-founder here at Symeta Behavior Science, and we essentially bring insights that are able to quantify the human characteristics of your team. So we look at the founders, we talk to the coaches, we talk with the investors, and we bring them all a unified picture that lets you really understand who it is that is behind the founding of the company.
Wow, very cool.
That is.
And so does it break down like, is it kind of like DISC, or is it like just behaviors that they do, or like, how does that work?
Yeah, so it's a little bit like DISC. If you've ever taken the PI, for instance, the person index, or whatever the heck it's called, I forget right now at the moment. If you've ever taken a Hogan assessment, if you've ever taken the Strengths Finder, all of those are kind of similar aspects where we look at the traits that people bring to the table. But we also spent 6 years doing a scientific study that was able to connect those traits with actual behaviors founders actually bring to the table and perform.
Wow. What a great way to look at a business.
It really is.
Or members, or even founders, to look at their team and employees.
Exactly.
I imagine the information you get out of it is to see who's going to jive well with each other, who naturally might not be good communicators together and understanding.
Totally.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's cool. We've seen tools like this, and maybe, I don't know if your tool works like this, but in the interview process, when companies are hiring, it's been really cool to watch assessments being used in that, almost like a early like vetting stage. If they're going to be if they're looking for a certain individual, they can kind of shake that down and they get to the final four or whatever that is. So
psychometrics are huge for that. It's one of those foundational things that we teach people to use, especially in a startup environment. They don't really typically use those kind of assessments. They kind of trust their gut feeling when they're trying to select for people and put people in the right teams. So that's definitely one of the ways that we see usage for this, is people come and say, hey, how can I put the right person in the right team while I'm scaling up my company?
Wow. How cool, man.
How long have you been working on Symeta?
Sure. So I alluded to it just a moment ago, about 6 years now. It's been in the works. We originally were Blackhawk Behavior Science. So for anybody who's listening that recognizes that name, that's us. And we've done a lot of research in the ecosystem. We've interacted with a lot of VCs, coaches, founders. We did a multi-thousand individual study. So we brought several thousand people into this study and really figured out what the heck they're doing. So it's been a ride.
Wow, that's cool, man. How did you get into this work?
Sure. So I got my master's in industrial organizational psychology. That's the science of figuring out what the employee wants, what the employer wants, and finding that middle ground between the two, right? And that's typically something you do for the larger companies. So while working with the Fortune 500 companies, I was seeing that they were paying me good money to do something that had a temporary result, right? They didn't really fix anything because everything was already cemented.
Totally.
So, say that again?
I just said totally.
Yeah. And it was really unfortunate, right? It kind of broke my heart to see that the employees that were supposed to benefit from these actions weren't going to stick around with those benefits, right? They were going to disappear over a couple months. So looked at the start and said, where do these problems begin? And it's at the conception of companies most of the time, right? It's when people make the companies that they solidify these issues.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love it from the investor perspective. Kind of shifting gears a little bit. I love, if I were to buy a business or invest in a business, I love, the founders who you're investing in. And I think what they can do to assess is awesome. Have you seen that work successfully from an investor perspective?
Yeah. So from an investor perspective, the deal flow kind of is surprisingly 5 to 10 years, right? That's just because that's when they start seeing those returns. They kind of expect that when you invest in a company, you're not going to see that money back for 5 to 10 years. So it's been kind of neat seeing that the smaller investors in particular that want to compete with these large firms that are kind of taking a lot of the deals, they need to do something drastically different. And the thing that they've realized sets them apart is actually looking at the people, right? Not necessarily the financial track record, not only choosing people that have had exits in the past, but actually looking at who are behind the idea. Because we know, you talk to anybody, it's the people behind the idea, not the idea itself.
That's awesome, man.
Dane, what excites you about this field?
What doesn't excite me about the field, I guess, is really the question, because it's amazing, man. I get to see actual change in the world, right? We have a couple companies that can't quite share at the moment because of reasons, but the really cool thing is that we see these companies go through and they become something, right, later on down the road. And you know that you got to help that happen, right? You saw them when they were just in the ideation phase. Now they're in Series A, Series B, whatever. And the only reason they're there is because you got to help them, right? They came to you, they saw the issues, they acted on it, right? That's a big thing. And I'm sure you guys know that too, is that it's not just setting up the situation, it's actually doing what needs to be done, right? So that's a really cool thing, and that's probably the most exciting part, is being able to look at the world and say, oh my god, I helped that product become a thing, or help that service become a thing.
Man. You're part of that business's story of success, which is really neat.
Sure.
Really nice to hold, knowing that you had an impact on them.
For sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You go. Dane, tell us about the year before you got involved in this. And what was that moment that you're like, yep, I need to move forward with this business?
Sure. Yeah. So the year leading up to like joining this venture and making this a thing was a very kind of chaotic year, because that was a time when I was looking at what my career really was going to be. I was just transitioning out of UX, UI research. I was just transitioning out of a more education focused area as well. And I was trying to figure out, what am I really doing? I got my master's degree. I like, let's make this happen. Yeah. So I started working for these big names and these big companies and thinking that's what I want, right? That's where it's going to culminate for me. But along the way, I kept seeing, this Band-Aid effect that I was kind of referring to before, right? Where I'd monitor the companies afterwards, right? After I came in, solved a problem, and then I'd leave, and then I'd keep tabs, and I'd be like, wait a minute, 3 months later, the problem's back, and I know we fixed the problem. Like we solved the attrition problem, or we solved the culture issue. Like we had it in the bag. What's going on? Yeah. So it wasn't till I was interviewing a pretty large company that does a lot of shipping and managing of materials here in the US that during my due diligence with them, they mentioned, oh yeah, by the way, we just need to check off a box. It doesn't have to work. I was like, what? Doesn't have to work?
Light bulb. Yep.
Yeah. And that's where it clicked. I was like, no. These are not the people that I should be doing the service for. It's not the big money people that are already kind of just going, let's clear it off the list. I need to do it with the people that care, the people that can make the difference. And if they actually do what we need them to do, actually make those cultural changes, it'll stick around, it'll reverberate, it'll happen.
That is very cool. Very cool.
How was the process of leaving what you were doing and going into something like this, though? Like personally, what was that experience like?
It was scary.
Yeah.
It was really scary.
Yeah. What were some outlooks in terms of nerves, and what was it that you were so nervous about? Was it financial? Was it because it was a space that you couldn't see the future?
Was there a limited belief about yourself?
What was that?
Sure. So I've been sort of gifted to have a pretty solid belief in my own capabilities, right? I've always kind of grown up with a good ecosystem where people were recognizing what I was doing and letting me stretch out and test those things, right? Have what we call in the industry a stretch assignment, where we're able to really do something that we don't really know how to do, but we think we can achieve. Sure. And find out where those parameters are with our abilities. Yeah. So thankfully it was, I believe that I could do it, right? If anybody could do it, it was me. But I didn't know how long it would take for that to happen, right? And it did take longer than I had originally anticipated, right? Mm-hmm. So there was the financial fear. There was just the general unknown, right? What people fear the most is the unknown. Oh, yeah. That's our biggest fear, right? So that was huge, going into a world where I was like, what is the market? Right? Exactly. Do people actually, are they going to be receptive to this?
Yep.
Knowing that I was pairing myself with somebody else, I have a co-founder, Nikki Blacksmith. She's brilliant. And knowing that she was good with this, right? She was capable and she was fantastic. But neither of us had done something like this before, right? Neither of us had launched a company of this scale before for this purpose. So it really was just the unknown. It's really just not knowing what tomorrow might hold.
I'm glad to see that you pushed through.
Persevered.
Very, very cool service and business you guys
market. It is, man. Changing the world.
I just what I like the most about it is it humanizes such a it humanizes a process that typically is just looked at Excel sheets and the P&L. Like it really humanizes it to see who is leading a company and what is a team actually made of. And I would imagine with some of these investors or co-founders, they look at these assessments and it's not necessarily like, oh, we need to remove these people. I would imagine it's more like, how can we help them improve in this area? Yes. And I think that's really important, and it gives you that insight, or at least it validates maybe looking at a business and you're like, or an individual like, there's something here missing. What is it? And then it really lets you dive in. So that's really cool, man. I appreciate businesses like this.
Thank you.
So Dane, before we wrap things up, if there was one thing that you would love to have our community of audience kind of take away from this conversation, what would you say that is?
It's remember to stay people focused, right? You can be in a company as big or small as you want. You can be in any sort of context when it comes down to it. But remember that you're the biggest strength, right? It's you, and recognizing where that growth could be and where the areas that you're not so prepared for are. That's the secret to the success.
That's so good, man.
Love that. It's so true. Staying people focused. I mean, ultimately, it just builds that good retention and culture, which is all that we're looking for. Well, Dane, where can people get in touch with you? Where can people find you, and if they want to utilize your services?
Sure. So you can go to www.symeta. That's SYMETA.science, right? We kept that science because we're Symeta Behavior Science. It was kind of a cool little thing we were able to find.
That's awesome. Symeta.science. I like it. Really cool. Yeah. Well, Dane, thank you so much for jumping on, man. Appreciate it. Know our audience.
Thank you.
With some good stuff.
Yeah, likewise. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. That was awesome. I love businesses like that. I love his story. He was just naturally going into this, and he was vulnerable. He told us that there were some fears, which is really good.
100%. We all have fears. Yeah. We have something holding us back, and once you get around that corner, man.
Yeah. I get really hyped on these kind of businesses.
Yeah, I do too. That was I loved what you said about humanizing it. I thought that was really cool. And
it's always just so
sat back and listened to
P&L focused, and are the numbers going to work? Is there marketing that's going to actually be something you can repeat? That this actually looks at a team very wholesomely. Well, thank you so much for joining us at the Peak Podcast. If you have yet, please hit that subscribe button, get the notifications, and we can't wait to have you along on the next episode of the Peak Podcast.
See you guys.